Hello, my name is John Henry. I'm the Media Relations Manager for Children's Defense Fund, and I'm joined here by Maggie Stern. She's the Program and Policy Manager of Youth Engagement for Children's Defense Fund, Texas. How's it going, Maggie?
It's going all right. How are you?
Pretty good. So the reason we're talking today is about book bans. This happens to be National Banned Books Week. I think the first thing we should talk about is just what's going on the ground right now in Texas. What are you guys seeing when it comes to censorship and book bans in public libraries?
Yeah, we're seeing a few different things. I live in Austin, but we work statewide and we're connected with community members, students, parents, families from across the state. And we are seeing in district after district books that students love being pulled from the shelves. They are, we know, like books that predominantly deal with or tell the stories of Black, Brown, LGBTQ plus children. And they're also books that support students dealing with, real life issues like grief or trauma. Time and time again, those are the sorts of resources that are being pulled and taken from students. In Texas, we're also unfortunately seeing state lawmakers who are willing to fuel the fires of the book bans by passing state legislation that makes it easier to ban books over the protests, I should say, of students, parents, teachers, and librarians. And I think, that last piece is most importantly what we're seeing is that the pushback to these efforts is really being led by students and families on the ground who are standing up for their freedom to read.
From where you are, your perspective in Texas, why is this alarming? What impact could this have on children and youth?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big reader as a kid, so every book pulled from a shelf is like an arrow to the heart for me. I think about all the times that I went to the library to find a book that spoke to my experience, that gave me a new perspective on the world, that was a fun read, that really taught me to love reading, which has continued into my adult life. And I think our Freedom Schools program every summer provides the best examples of why reading is so powerful and why book bans are so harmful for young people. We see every summer that when students get books that represent their own identities and lives, the way that scholars just transform, that expand their worldviews, that their own identities are affirmed and strengthened through reading, and that they're inspired to continue to read in their own free time. That's what we want for all of our children, and book bans are really taking away those life-saving resources for students.
For those of you who don't know, we've also been posting a few videos on our Twitter pages and Facebook of excerpts that all of us here at Children's Defense Fund have been reading of banned books. You read one as well, you participated in it. And something we highlighted are these are perspectives that can also be silenced when it comes to classrooms, public libraries. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, we know that, in Texas, students report that too many times they receive a whitewashed curriculum in the classroom, that they're not talking about Black history, that they're not talking about, the civil rights movement here in Texas. They're not talking about Indigenous history. They're not talking about LGBTQ plus folks. That all of these stories and perspectives that increasingly in Texas, those are the demographics that students are identifying as. That those stories are not being told. And books, even though we still see that there are more books published, children's books published about animals than there are about, Black characters, queer characters. There's still that disparity, but more and more new books that are being published are being told with the stories that students want to read about their community's histories and about themselves. And not just, this really is for all students, even students who don't share those identities need to understand their classmates' perspectives and be part of understanding our beautiful and broad and diverse state and world that they're going to grow up in.
So I'm going to ask you kind of a two-part question here.
Sure.
First, what needs to be done when it comes to censorship and book bans? And then second of all, you guys have been very active in Texas when it comes to combating this issue. What is CDF Texas doing as well?
Sure. Well, I'll take the first part of that first, because I think that what we do have, even though we are in an unprecedented time for censorship in school libraries, nationwide and certainly in Texas, the numbers, the books that are being pulled are really heartbreaking. But what we know is that the majority of Texans and the majority of folks across the country, like this is not the vision that they have for their public schools. Most of us, like I said, want our students to have the resources they need to thrive. And so we need every single person who believes in the freedom to read to take action. That can be anything from showing up to a local school board or library board meeting, even before the book banners come to town, to say, like, we appreciate what you're doing. We want more of these stories in our libraries. Thank you for in school districts that are supporting scholars and students. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And here's how we're going to commit to doing it further. We need folks to show up to vote in local elections. Run for office themselves. We love like young people, recent students going out and saying, like, I know best what my school district needs, what my problems were as a student, so I'm going to run for office. And we need more resources to local students and parent organizers on the ground who are doing this work. You know, that's the baseline. What we're doing in Texas as Children's Defense Fund is, like I said, working directly with community members. We have just incredible student and parent partners from across the state who are already leading in their districts, and all we need to do is step in and provide like those additional resources, training for young advocates who maybe this is their first time speaking up at a school board meeting and they're not sure, like, how do I even register? How do I share my story in a way that the school board member will actually listen to in the 1 to 3 minutes that I'm allotted to speak. And so we do those advocacy trainings with students all the time, and then get to watch them, you know, show up in spaces of power to make those demands on policymakers. We're also working with school districts. We know it's a really confusing and difficult time for a lot of districts in Texas. Like I mentioned, the new state law that's currently in a long legal process, but is meant to really inspire fear and pull books from shelves even before the law is officially implemented, or districts are required to take action. So we're working with partners to do kind of that public education and awareness to make sure that districts know they actually have the responsibility to protect these materials for students. Students have the right to read and to read freely in schools. And so, you know, doing that public education piece, and then bringing along and expanding our base of folks who are, like I said, really invested in making sure that students have those resources.
Cool. Well, Maggie, you guys are doing great work on the ground there in Texas. Is there anything else you think we should know about this issue?
Just listen to the students who are leading it. You know, I can't count how many times I've heard book banning politicians say like they're just thinking of the kids, and literally like talking over the young people who are showing up to tell them what they need. Young people know what they need from their schools, and it's our job as adults. Our responsibility is to provide resources, funding, books for them. So we're really proud to be able to do that here in Texas and as part of Children's Defense Fund across the country.
Cool. Maggie, thank you so much. Once again, that was Maggie Stern with CDF Texas. I'm John Henry with CDF. Thanks so much for watching.